Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Daily Fantasy Digest podcast, the all-inclusive podcast where we talk all things fantasy to help give you an edge against the competition. I am your host, Joe Bewer, and today I'm going to be breaking down the massive 15-game slate on Tuesday, April 30th. It's a massive one, and I'm going to be giving you my favorite pitching options for cash games and GPPs, as well as my favorite bat stacks for both types of games as well. So let's jump right into it with our cash game plays. Right off the bat, you'll notice when looking at the pitching options for tonight, there are 4 pitchers over 10K. You got Trevor Bauer, Blake Snell, Jarrett Cole, and Luis Castillo. Now, tonight, in particular, I want to target Trevor Bauer. He's got the best matchup, in my opinion. Currently, this season only has a 38.7% hard contact rate with a 3.96 xFIP. Not really giving up too much hard contact, which is what we like to see. Has a ground ball rate of 36% and only a 9.4 home run per 9.4% home run per 9, which is really good, especially in a nice matchup in Miami against a team who has not been hitting well at all lately and has not been making any noise as far as blowing up, and has not been a team that we've been targeting for bat stacks at all this entire season. That's going to be my cash game SP1 for sure. I don't really see how you don't pay up for him. Blake Snell's $400 cheaper in a matchup where he could be exploited against KC. I understand why you would go Blake Snell and GPPs just to get away from the chalk, but Bauer is going to be the chalkiest play on the slate. Jarrett Cole is priced appropriately for the matchup in Minnesota because they've been decently hot lately with bats. But my SP2, because I think the play today in cash games is going to be to pay up for 2 big pitchers and then just literally try and find you're going to be scraping the barrel for bats with the amount of pitchers that are on the slate. So I think the second pitcher in the best matchup for me is Luis Castillo. Kind of flown under the radar this season when you get into the big talks of all of the big name position or big name pitchers that are out there. But I think Castillo is going to be somebody that you're going to want to exploit the matchup that he's in today. He's averaged roughly 25 to 26 fantasy points this season, even had a 34-point performance where he threw 8 Ks against Miami earlier this season, which is another reason why I want Bauer against Miami. Castillo's numbers on the season: 3.32 xFIP, only 27.4% hard contact rate, only 4.5% home run per 9, and a 53.1% ground ball rate, not having only a 27.2% fly ball rate, really limiting fly balls to all batters. And there's really only a few threats on the Mets lineup for tomorrow, Peter Alonso being one of them. But I don't really see that being an issue for Castillo with the stuff that he's been throwing lately and how well he's been pitching this season. I don't really see the Mets being that too much of an issue. He's only given up more than 1 run the entirety of this whole season. Has shutout performances through 6 innings and 7 innings against Miami and against Atlanta. I really just don't see how this is going to be any different, and his price is it's a little expensive, which I think will scare people off of him, but the upside with the Ks that he produces, as well as Bauer, is going to be pretty unmatched on this slate, other than like Blake Snell or Jarrett Cole. But I think those matchups are just too hard to predict, and that's why I'm kind of fading those matchups. Another potential savings off of Castillo that I would consider is Zach Greinke. The Yankees have not been hitting well by any means. Greinke did start off the season terribly slow with a negative 5.2 performance, only getting 3 innings against the Dodgers. But since then has put up no performance lower than 22 fantasy points, averaging roughly 7 Ks per 9 through those past 5 games, and has faced some pretty tough opponents: the Rangers, Cubs, Padres. Not too many big names, but the Yankees are pretty depleted right now. No Aaron Judge or no Stanton, no Judge right now. They're just not the team that you're used to seeing, and the Diamondbacks are at home, and Zach Greinke has roughly 9 Ks per 9 at home. I think this is a great matchup for him, and he's kind of flying under the radar when you get into the looks of all the top pitchers tonight. You have Marquez, Walker Buehler above him. I really think he's going to be overlooked. This could also be sort of a fly under the radar GPP play, but 9,700 is really not too expensive when you really consider the matchup, and that would free up a little bit of extra cap space for you to go ahead and get in some of these bat stacks. Now, for my GPP plays for tonight, not too many. I really don't want to personally fly under the 9K mark because the pitching options get quite ugly. Somebody I would be considering is Felix Hernandez against the Cubs tomorrow. 3.91 ERA on the season with 21 Ks. Last outing away at San Diego, pitched very well, 8 Ks through 7 innings, only 1 earned run on 3 hits. It's been pretty much you don't know what you're going to get out of Felix Hernandez type of season. That's why I would say this is a very, very heavy GPP option. He's only priced at 6,800, which is to me a little low. I know the Cubs have been streaking, winning 9 out of their last 10, but they are at home in Seattle. I just think that 6,800 is a little too soft of a price for Felix Hernandez. If you wanted to as well take the savings, you could go with CC Sabathia. This is another play that I'm not the fondest of, but I think could pay off in this matchup. Sabathia has pitched only 5 innings so far this season, averaging roughly 5 Ks per 9 so far. Had one breakout performance against the Royals, 21.1 fantasy points. Hovered his first performance against the White Sox at 16.7 fantasy points. It's a potential. It's a flyer for me. If I had my choice, my rankings for tonight, Bauer is definitely number 1, then Castillo, then Greinke, then Felix, then Sabathia. I think Felix at 6,800 is just outrageously too underpriced. I don't really understand why he's priced that way, but I mean, we'll take it. If you were to go ahead and plug and play Castillo and Bauer, you'd be left with on DraftKings 3,600 left for bat stacks. It's going to be very hard to come by. You're going to be looking for quite a bit of value. And let me jump into my favorite bat stacks. It's going to be very tough taking 2 over 10K pitchers tonight and being able to fit in some of the very good bat stacks that I think are going to pay off, especially in GPPs. But for the sake of it, I do want to highlight the White Sox in the Orioles game. The pricing on the players for the White Sox is a little bit outrageous. That's why I think stacking the White Sox is going to definitely be a GPP play. If you pair Felix with Greinke, maybe you'll have roughly like 4,300 left. You'll be able to fit in some of these White Sox guys. You have Abreu, Garcia, Yohan Moncada, Tim Anderson, and Yonder Alonso are the people that I would fly with. Cashner has been absolutely dreadful this season for the Orioles and has just gotten lit up by lefties. Yonder Alonso should absolutely eat at a price tag of 4,000. I think it's an absolute joke. I don't really understand how he's priced the way that he is. Tim Anderson at 5,400. He's been on absolute fire lately, but I don't see the price reaching Mike Trout numbers being anything realistic. Yohan Moncada at 5,100. Same deal. I don't really understand that either. Larry Garcia at 4,700. Switch hitter versus Cashner. I could see it, but that to me is still a GPP play. And then Abreu at 5,200. Just way too expensive. On the flip side, though, going up against the White Sox, I definitely do think that you could stack the Orioles tonight in GPP and be okay with it. Ivan Nova is pitching for the White Sox, has had one decent outing and a bunch of dreadful outings, but we all know Ivan Nova from the Pittsburgh Pirates days. He's definitely not been a stellar pitcher, to say the least. For me, this game does have quite a bit of weather concern. It's supposed to be very, very rainy and gross in Chicago tomorrow. So this game does have potential to get rained out, but if it does not, I think you can find some hefty value here. Chris Davis at first base, only 3,100 against Ivan Nova, who's a righty and he's a lefty bat. I think it's definitely somewhere you could go, especially if the weather's bad and the wind is blowing out. You could definitely see some balls fly further. Jonathan VR, 4,600. decently priced, a little too high, but he's been hovering around that price range all season. Trey Mancini should be coming back for tomorrow's game, 4,800 price range. I understand the price range. He's been lighting it up all year. I do see people being scared off of him coming off of an injury, but that just makes me want to plug him into a GPP lineup and take the risk. Dwight Smith Jr. at 4,700 would be the last person I would go to. This game to me is going to be probably a game total of 9, possibly even 10. Lines have not come out yet since I am recording this the night before. But that would be a GPP game that I would like to stack. A stack that I think is going to go low under the radar is going to be the Pittsburgh Pirates versus Sampson pitching for the Rangers. I do think that Adam Frazier is far too cheap, 4,200. You can easily fit him in with any of the pitchers above. Colin Moran, 4,100, has stolen base upside. Gregory Polanco coming back, 4,500, just getting the back swing of things. Probably going to be hitting third or fourth with Starling Marte out. And then Melky Cabrera, 4,100, put up an absolute monster game the other day, I believe 2 days ago. 2 home runs, 30-something fantasy points. It was absolutely ridiculous. I think it's definitely where you can go back to the well here in Texas. It's going to be warm. Ball's going to fly a little bit farther. I think you could definitely see some high numbers from the Pittsburgh Pirates from that game. Last stack that I have is I would assume if the White Sox and Orioles game gets canceled, that people are going to go to the well against with Oakland and Boston. That game is supposed to be a pretty high total as well. Here's my issue. Oakland is priced far too low, especially for what Chris Davis has been doing all season. He's priced at 4,400 right now, which is an absolute joke. It's just he's had a few off games. Past few games, and the pricing has dropped, and I think this is where you take advantage of the bounce back right here where he goes yard at Fenway. It's inevitable. I think Piscotty is a great play for outfield, 4,300. Pinder as well at 4,200, and then Chapman, of course, who's been absolutely on fire this whole season at 4,800 is quite a great stack for me. And I would say that my last stack of the night is going to be targeting the Cardinals, going up against Anibal Sanchez in Washington. I think this is a great game to stack. Cardinals have been very well all year. I don't believe that I would be targeting any of Washington against Adam Wainwright. Just not something that I want to do here today, but this game does have some weather concern, potential rain. But if it does end up getting played, I do see the Cardinals being a quality stack against the Washington Nationals. I would definitely say that Matt Carpenter, lefty versus Anibal Sanchez at 4,100 is just far too cheap, even if it's just a plug and play one off with any of the other stacks I've mentioned. I would definitely roll with Carpenter. Marcell Ozuna, who's been on fire, he's priced at 5,100. He's getting up there in price, but I think you can still play him here. Potentially GPPs. Paul Goldschmidt at 5,300 is priced because he absolutely mashes righties. He crushes righties. So I see this price being somewhat fair, maybe a couple hundred too high. I see him more at 5K. But Goldschmidt is definitely somebody that is highlighted here at first base. And then lastly, Colton Wong, who I think is a flyer under the radar at 4,200. I do see this Cardinals game going high total as well. It's going to be very tough. I don't know if you're going to be able to fit in everybody from the stacks that I mentioned. But if you do decide to go with 2 high-priced pitchers, I definitely recommend the Pirates against Sampson, who's been absolutely dreadful all year. He's 4.5 ERA, has no K upside, has let up a run in most starts, negative points on a few starts, has only eclipsed over 7 Draftkings points once this whole season, and that was the season opener. It's just not been good for Sampson so far. I mean, he's reached over 3 innings one time. It's just not been something that you want to look for, and I think that the Pirates aren't priced appropriately, and I think this is going to be a stack, especially if you're looking for fillers in cash games that is going to be overlooked. But that's going to be my favorite low price stack for the night. Obviously, the White Sox and Orioles are going to be everyone's chalk favorites, especially anytime you can target Cashner. But I would say is at this time, so last week we had Alex Gordon as the dinger of the night. Ended up not hitting a homer, but ended up putting up 12 fantasy points, crushing value, which is pretty nice. So we're 1-1 so far on the dinger call. But for this, I'm going to say that my dinger of the night is going to be Chris Davis. He's far too cheap at 4,400. I think he's going to get overlooked with a soft matchup against Porcello on the Red Sox. I think it's just, Porcello this season is just a 7.4 ERA. No real K upside, negative points in a few games this season. I think Chris Davis takes one deep on Tuesday. So that would be my dinger of the night call is going to be Chris Davis. So just to do a quick recap, pitching options, Trevor Bauer, Luis Castillo, top two pitchers. Greinke coming in at kind of a fly under the radar type of play. And then I would say that Felix Hernandez is probably the best value at 6,800 with potential K upside. Stacking, Oakland is a great stack. Pirates are the cheapest stack. And then you kind of pick one-offs from other games. You could take the Cardinals and maybe somebody from the Orioles. But I think that Oakland and the Pirates are going to be probably the best bet for tomorrow. If you're listening on YouTube and you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Videos are coming out like 3 to 4 times a week. We got some interviews coming later this week as well. If you're on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, give us a 5-star review. And yeah, stay tuned for more breakdowns and interviews. And yep, alrighty, peace.